that's what I love seeing when people walk away saying, we had the best night. There's nothing like this in Sydney. That's what I love hearing. Like, that's when I'm like, you know what, I've done it. I've done what I needed to do.
This is the Deep in the Weeds podcast. I'm Anthony Huckstep. A few decades ago, Australia enjoyed large-scale migration from Lebanon. Its influence began to run a thread through our food industry, but often with accessible offerings. But some operators have showcased Lebanese and its colourful and fragrant beauty in a manner many Australians haven't witnessed before. Chady Khouzame is the owner of Zaffi in Sydney. Chady, how are you?
Good, thanks. How are you?
Good. It's good to get you on the show.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah. How are things going there in Sydney?
Good. Lots of change from since COVID, but it's been good. It's been good. We're adapting.
You're in an area of Sydney which got very quiet during that period of time. Is the clientele a little bit different sort of than it was sort of 4 years ago?
Yeah. So we're located right in the CBD. So it's definitely changed a lot since 2019. So it's a lot more... the work from home has taken precedent as well. So a lot of people are, Mondays and Fridays are not what they used to be. Tuesdays and Thursdays are pretty good, but they obviously they aren't what they used to be at all. So we've been changing and working with the change in the environment at the moment. So yeah.
Has the restaurant changed in the offering sort of with what you're doing since that period of time?
Yeah, well, we actually signed this lease back in November 2019. So this project has been in the works for a while. So during that period, one of the it's a multi-level venue, and we were supposed to have like a coffee and breakfast offering. But during the pandemic, we knew things were changing completely. So we actually scrapped the coffee and breakfast component, and we just utilized the space into more of a private dining and restaurant space, which has been good. But yeah, it's definitely an experience, which is what we're doing here at Zaffi. So so many things changed in the last few years.
Tell us a little bit about Zaffi and what you're doing there.
I think obviously from 2019 and what we knew and what everyone knew for so long, everything was changing during the pandemic. People's needs and wants and, experiences were all changing. So during that time, we were trying to figure out what it was going to be when we came out at the other end. So I think we moved into more of not a dining, not a bar, not a restaurant. We started to look at Europe and the States to see what they're doing, and especially the Middle East. And everything is built around food, and then it's all just kind of, it goes from there. So you got food, and then your drinks, and then the entertainment, and then the music. So it was trying to turn it into more of a supper club, as opposed to, being a designated restaurant or designated nightclub or bar. We were trying to bring all elements together, bringing it all together, just to create one unique experience where, you can come. If you want to come for a dining experience, you're there for that. But then it just saves people going, to a club after or going to a bar after. You're kind of offering it all in one. So, that's kind of how we came up with that. So it's massive it's very, very massive in Lebanon, where you go, you sit, you eat, and there's entertainment in front of you, and you're just enjoying it. So we're trying to do that here. So far it's doing really well.
Are there challenges involved in creating a venue that's so multifaceted and open quite late as a bar as well? Yeah,
I'm trying to hold the patrons here as long as possible without them being bored. So I think that's the biggest thing. A lot of people, we're open from 5 p.m. for dinner on the weekends, and people aren't coming necessarily so early on. They're coming, because they want to see the whole night evolve. So a lot of our bookings are now coming at 7:30. So we're working through bringing in the people through the earlier sessions. But most people are coming at 7:38 by the time they sit down, by the time all their guests arrive, by the time they sit and eat, the night doesn't really start till about 9:30, 10. That's when, we have the drums and the involvement of the crowd. But we do it in stages where we kind of, strip it back after that first, 20-minute set. It's kind of like a bit of a tease to what they can expect during the night. And then we, strip it back because people are still finishing off their dinner and their mains. So we want them to enjoy their food as well. And then as the night progresses, it kind of just ramps up. So it's a party. It's an unexpected night out.
That sounds amazing. Tell us a little bit about the restaurant element and the food. Australians aren't unfamiliar with amazing flavors and colors of Lebanon. But, you guys, as well as, a number of other well-known chefs like Greg Malouf have really championed that region. Tell us what you're doing and the food.
I've been in food. My family have been in food for 37 years. Mum and dad started a catering company December when I was born. So 37 years ago, they started that. And it's become a very massive part of the Lebanese culture. Like, mum and dad have really, like, dad started off with immigration. So he was actually helping people. And then it turned into something else when he met my mum, which was massive. And so food's been in my blood my whole life. Literally was washing dishes, when I was like 6, 7 years old. I used to go around at the functions and empty the ashtrays, the days where you could smoke inside a reception. I used to do all that. So worked with, like, it was literally all we lived and breathed growing up. Like, we didn't ever go to, like, church, or we didn't go to friends' birthdays or family events, because we were always working. Like Fridays, Saturdays, Sundays was like always with the family working. So and then dad used to always tell me, I've actually loved the music industry, I love the entertainment industry, and dad was like, no, at the end of the day, people need to eat, people need to drink. You'll never go wrong with food. It doesn't matter what the world is going through, people always need to eat and drink. So I've literally never understood those words until as I got older. So I've really taken what he said to me, and and just taken what I've learned over the years, and just kind of put it all into this restaurant. That's probably been the biggest thing. But yeah, it's literally all we've lived and breathed our whole life, me and my siblings.
Well, I want to explore the restaurant and the food that you're serving there in detail in a little bit, but take us back to when you were young. Is there any sort of dishes or foods or feasts that you can tell us about that you remember fondly from when you were young?
Yeah, Easter at my grandparents' house was always like a thing, especially on the Good Friday, where it was always vegetarian friendly. And then, on Easter Day, where you have your barbecues and stuff. I think they were the most fond memories that I had growing up. It was always Easter, and grandma spending a week preparing food and for all her kids and nephews and nieces. So that was the biggest thing. But in terms of food, Lebanese is very broad with food. I think I don't think people realize how much food recipes that exist in the Lebanese culture. So there is so much. There's an extensive range. I think only people have only seen a handful of dishes, but there's so much. But the vine leaves is probably one of my favorite dishes growing up until today. It's been one of my favorite dishes. We don't have it as often because it's a very time-consuming process, wrapping the vine leaves and so forth. But it's probably been one of the staple dishes that's always been at a Easter or Christmas. It's kind of like a big deal.
Tell us a little bit about the food of Lebanon. You mentioned that most people don't sort of get a chance to see the depth and breadth of it. Can you take us on a bit of a journey and share some of sort of things that people might not know?
Yeah, that's where when we started looking at what everyone was doing in the industry and the CBD and what there was to offer, there was so much around, vegan friendly, vegetarian friendly, and all of that. And I'm just like, you know what? Lebanese food has all that offering, and it's not even without even trying. So we just thought Sydney, it just lacked the options that were available in terms of Lebanese food. And I think that that was pretty much where we started. There's literally dishes like there's shanklish, which is it's a dairy dish, but it's a very yummy dish. No one really eats shanklish a lot. Then you got fattoush salad and you got tabbouleh. These are all vegan friendly, vegetarian friendly. But there's a range. You got from vine leaves. You've got the stuffed zucchini. Where there's a tomato based version or the yogurt based version. There's the spicy fish, the samkihara, which is something that not many people have tried, but it's actually very, very yummy. And I think the other day, actually, when Greg was around, we had the pop up with Greg, and we were talking about the kibineya, which is like raw meat, essentially. And he was trying to explain it to the young generation. And in that moment, we had kind of like a aha moment where, we were just talking. He was trying to explain it. We're just like, it's like a beef tartare, and that's how we could kind of explain it to them. We're like, everyone understands what beef tartare is, but to us, it's kind of like raw meat, or like you can't really explain it properly because of the dialect and the breakdown in that. So we were just like, oh yeah, so it's kind of like a beef tartare. I was like, oh okay, cool. So everyone kind of then understood it. It was a very easy way to kind of explain it. So now we're kind of like explaining that to our patrons that come in that don't understand what raw meat is or kibineya is. We're just like, oh, it's kind of like a beef tartare. So. We've overcome that one, so which has been great. But there is just honestly with Dad with the catering, there was nothing that wasn't available to people to order. Like there was so much food, like the unbelievable amount of food. There's the chicken and potato, in the oven that was baked with lemon and garlic. There's so much. There's so much.
Do you have any stories of the influence that your parents had on you, with their catering company, or advice that you've taken into sort of your career in food?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing was bringing, being hospitality. Obviously, we're very hospitable people, but I think my parents. We always had people in and out of our house, so everything was always based around food. Whether people coming over to meet my dad for a meeting, there was food on the table. Whether there was just everything was always around food, and that was kind of their way of welcoming people. Mum doesn't love cooking. She cooks, don't get me wrong, but she hates it. She doesn't enjoy it at all. But she does the best Lebanese food. But Dad loved cooking. Dad was always in the kitchen. He was always cooking. He'd always just put random things together and always turned out pretty good. But I think it was just always being proud of our heritage and our food and what we have to offer. That was the biggest thing that we learned. I didn't understand it growing up, but now as I'm older, I've really kind of understood what he was trying to explain. I've obviously I think food is always something that brings people together.
Outside of your parents' catering company, what were your sort of first steps in the industry?
The catering was literally the first steps. It was me, my older brother, my sister, and my younger brother. All four of us were working in it growing up. My older brother and sister also have a restaurant. We've just always been around each other, and we always bounce ideas off each other. But I think it's just literally I think my memories of hospitality growing up has always been working in the kitchen. Literally as a kid, I can't even explain. I didn't really like being at the front of the house and waiting on the tables. And I was always a very introverted person, but I enjoyed the back end, the structure, the operational part of it, getting ready for service and so forth. That was the most enjoyable part, but that was literally my childhood, was always in the back end.
Tell us about the Carter.
Yeah, so Carter's been around for 7 years. It's been around for 7 years. It's probably one of my greatest achievements as well. We opened it up with bringing the same idea. It was bringing, music, entertainment, food, all into one and making it one experience. But since COVID, everything has kind of changed. So it's, during COVID, we kind of, traded throughout it as much as we could, but we kind of got pigeonholed. And then, you know, that whole concept and that whole venue, we're going through a restructure at the moment, and looking at most likely closing in January for a 3-month renovation period and evolving the business. We've obviously seen the success of Zaffi do so well. We've had plans for Carter since 2019 as well. We had concepts done, renders done, but because of COVID, we couldn't actually do it. But we're now looking at transitioning the venue into a similar style to Zaffi, so into a supper club as well. But it's been a journey. During COVID, when restrictions went up and down, we kind of went up and down with it. But now, it's due for a change in direction.
Well, tell us about the beginnings of the Carter and what you created.
It was a very quick project. We had some, it was a lot of pressure, a quick turnaround project. We had a 10 p.m. license. We had to apply and get a 2 a.m., which got approved. But basically the idea was I'm very much inspired by overseas. I was very much inspired by, Beyonce, Jay-Z, Kanye, all these great celebrities. And I was trying to bring that part of entertainment value into, and then bringing in great food all into one space. So, we did that. And, we didn't have any PR team at that moment, and we had a patron come into the venue once, and she messaged me emailed me, I think on a Tuesday or a Wednesday. She was like, "Hey, I was there on the weekend, love the Carter. Can I ask you some questions?" I'm like, "Yeah, cool." So she sent me a whole bunch of questions, and I answered them. I flagged the email, but I wasn't even intending to reply to it. And then I'm like, I might just reply to this email, and then I responded to it, and we talked about, where was your inspiration come from, why Jay-Z, Beyonce, et cetera, et cetera. So did that, and I sent it back to her. The next day, she did an article about it. I'm like, oh, cool, it's really cool, a cool achievement. And then literally the next day after that, it was probably, for me, it was the biggest thing I've ever seen blow up in my entire life. Like, you see PR blow up, just here in our own little, circle of Sydney-siders in Australia. But to see this article, one interview that I did blow up, massive around the States. It went everywhere. I was on the news in Texas. It was massive. Like they went with like a Beyonce, Jay-Z themed restaurant opened up in Australia. So it was everywhere. I was on the news in Texas. I was on Time Magazine. I was in Vogue. It was everywhere. And by the time it went around the whole of America, it then landed in Australia. Then Australia started to pick up on it. And then we just saw no one coming into the venue to hundreds of people coming into the venue. Like, we weren't even prepared for that level of traffic. And from that day, it has been the biggest blessing of my life. It has been like I've never, it was such, I was so overwhelmed by it, but it literally is what made the venue, it made Carter what it is today. So it was incredible. So it was insane.
Did it change the venue and what you did with it, with this focus that it suddenly got?
It did. The one thing is, it's very hard to control a narrative once it's out there. So that was one thing. So where we were very focused much on food, it started getting pigeonholed into as a bar nightclub. So it was very hard to then change the venue when the articles are out there for so long. So that was one of our biggest challenges. And that's obviously one of the things that we discuss right now, with our branding team, in regards to how do we find the balance of both? How do we evolve the Carter? How do we do it where, we're not pigeonholed as a nightclub, because we don't want to be a nightclub anymore. We don't want to be a restaurant, but how do we control it? So these are the things that we're dealing with right now, and how we can, make sure we get it right. But yeah, it was crazy. It was the greatest experience of my life, just to see, Fridays have, 20 people, 50 people to then 400 people, 500 people, lines down the road. Like, it was a pretty overwhelming experience, where we weren't ready for it, so it was great. It was great.
Tell us a little bit about the food at Zaffi. You've got executive, or you've got your chef in there, Graham Hunt, and yourself. How do you create the? Are you there? Hello. Have you got me, Chady? Hello. Yeah. Tell us a little bit about the food there at Zaffi. You've got head chef Graham Hunt there. How do you describe the food, and is there a dish or two that you can take us through that sort of exemplifies the offering?
So Graham was a very it was a very natural, fluid relationship that was built over time. I didn't know much about him until I met him. My family did a pop up with him at their restaurant during COVID. I met him then, and started chatting. But seeing his resume and his background, he's very underrated and very low key, very humble, and we bonded really, really well. So, it's been a journey. We've been together since 2021, and only now we've only opened up the restaurant about 4 months ago. So we've been together for a while, and he's been there with me on that journey. But yeah, I think we've. I wouldn't say it's Lebanese. Like, I've also let Graham do his thing, I want to showcase himself and what he's capable of, but I didn't want to be another Lebanese restaurant. But he's taken in the tradition. He spent some time with my mum to get, some recipes and understand, how to make some of the recipes. And that was pretty good experience for him. But it's not like a modern take on anything. It's a very, it's Australian Lebanese, where you have your traditional staple pieces like your hummus, your baba ganoush, your eggplant fateh, but then you have a modern take on the kibinaya, which he does is like a beef tartare, which is raw meat with like a hash brown, which is one of our staple pieces here at the moment. Does really, really well. So I think the beef tartare and the kingfish for us are our biggest takes, where he brings in the Lebanese influence and his take on Lebanese as well on those dishes.
You briefly mentioned Greg Malouf a little bit earlier. You had a collaboration with him. How did that come about, and what did you guys do?
My family have known Greg for a while, so we've worked with him in the past. My family used to put on an event called the Magnificence of the Middle East. So it was basically showcasing the Middle East and bringing in the greatest chefs. So Greg Malouf was one of them. Shane Delia was another one. And then bringing, fashion and music and art all in under one room and just celebrating what the Middle East has to offer. So met Greg years ago on that. And then I think trying to make the decision on bringing in Greg to Zaffi, because he's a very, fine dining, he's a great chef. And obviously Zaffi it's not his usual take. So it was trying to merge the two in a way where we both, we obviously respect him and what he's done. And then also what we're doing as well. But I think, it was actually great to work with him. He's a very, very chill, very humble man. He's a really, really nice person. In terms of the dishes that he created, I think the salmon nai is till today my favorite one. I actually just came from the kitchen now asking him for a plate of it. The salmon nai is my favorite dish that he's created. We've got it now on our menu, but it is just yum.
Tell us a bit about the dish.
Well, it's obviously you've got the traditional version of it is kibinaya, which is minced lamb. And you eat it raw, but it's got wheat in it and, a lot of herbs and spices in it. He does a version, but with salmon. So everything is exactly the same, except instead of using mince meat, he's using salmon, which is just really you don't taste the difference. If you were to put side by side and try them both, you wouldn't really taste the difference. But my favorite, I don't know what it is about the salmon, it's so yum, it's so fresh. It's just full of flavor, and it's just I find it a little bit lighter to eat than the raw meat. Where
do you see Lebanese food in Australia at the moment? Do you feel like it's reached a certain level of maturity or has a long way to go? How do you see it?
I feel like it has a long way to go. I don't. You see, there's a lot of restaurants of, you got a lot of Thai restaurants, you got a lot of, Japanese restaurants. They're everyone, every corner. There's not as many Lebanese, and it's what I've never understood is that it's a very, I feel like, underrated food, because it is vegetarian friendly, it is vegan friendly. Like, there's so many options. Like, everything could be made to someone's what they can and can't eat. That's what I've found. Like, I feel like there's still a long way to go. There's a lot of restaurants. You got Jimmy's Falafel now, that's doing really well. So that's kind of like pushing the Lebanese food and bringing that to the forefront. So I feel like people are getting onto it now, and realizing that there is a lot more that Lebanese have offer and haven't offered yet. So there's it's not just chicken or or lamb or tabbouleh. There's just so much more that Lebanese food is than just the staple pieces that people know. Yeah, I still think it's still early days. I think it's going to do really well.
What plans do you have for Zaffi over the next sort of year or two?
I have a meeting tomorrow, actually, around regards to it. I've got a meeting with the landlord, just to see what more we can do. We're in a building that's completely vacant, so we're looking to see what else we can do with the space. We're booked out months in advance at the moment, so we're trying to figure out how we can fit more people in. So I think we haven't really scraped the surface at the moment, but I think in the next, the next 12 months, I think we're working on building our brand to, that brand will be taken a lot more serious, and it's going to be around a long time to come. So we don't want to be here and gone, in 2 or 3 years' time. We're trying to build something that will be around for a while, and just a reliable brand, a reliable place that people can go have some good food, create some good memories that they'll keep with them for their life. That's the biggest thing.
Tell us a little bit more about the entertainment side of things. You mentioned about wanting to keep people there beyond just eating dinner. What sort of things would they enjoy into the night?
I think just the vibe. I think it's just the vibe, the atmosphere. We have a lot of the biggest feedback we've received at the moment from Lebanese people is to see other nationalities in there and enjoying and embracing our culture. Like, that is very, very rewarding for all of us. I think me seeing all walks of life come in and embrace our culture and the music and the drums and the food. Everyone just has a good time. There's no intention other than just coming in, having a good time, and just people being involved with each other. So it's been rewarding. Like I said, you come in and we try not to even start the Lebanese music, because sometimes people they're sitting there, they're still eating, but they haven't really had once they've got a few drinks in them and they've had a few cocktails, they start to loosen up a bit, and the rest just, the intuition just goes out the window. Everyone's just like having a good time. So, but yeah, that our biggest challenge is sometimes during the night. It's like, okay, are we ready to start the drums? Are the people vibing yet? Is it started late? Do we have enough? Are they a bit relaxed before they start enjoying themselves? Because sometimes you could start it early and there's no vibe. Because people are still like, no one has the urge to get up and start dancing. So once you get one table up, everyone starts to get up. So, like I said, for us, it's just making sure we give great service, great food, and a good night where people just leave with just happy. So.
Well, it's very exciting what you're doing there, Chady, in the centre of Sydney. What do you love about what you do? I
like providing a space for people to create a life memory. That's my number one, the reason why I do what I do. And that's something that I learned from my dad. So I think people have their 30th birthdays here. They spend all day buying their dress. The girls spend their days, buying their dress, getting their makeup and hair done. And it's a night out for them. And that's a memory that's going to live with them for the rest of their life. So trying to create a space for the guests, that's my biggest thing. That's what I love seeing when people walk away saying, we had the best night. There's nothing like this in Sydney. That's what I love hearing. Like, that's when I'm like, what, I've done what I needed to do, So Obviously, there's always ways to improve the venue. And we're not perfect, but I think as long as the foundation is there, and that's kind of the main thing. But yeah, I think guests coming to our venue to spend their nights with us, that is a very overwhelming experience. So we got to live up to making sure that they have a good night.
Well, Chady, it's an absolute honour to have you on Deep in the Weeds today to hear just a part of your story. Please keep in touch, and we'll catch up again soon.
For sure. Hopefully we see you down at Zaffi soon.
This is the Deep in the Weeds podcast. I'm Anthony Huckstep. Stay tuned as we take a deep dive into the lives of the incredible people who ply their trade in the food and hospitality sector. Special thanks to executive producer Rob Locke for making this all happen. Follow us on Instagram at Deep in the Weeds Podcast, or email us at podcast@deepintheweeds.com.au. Stay safe and be well.